Welcome everyone to this Connect University session on European Cancer Imaging Initiative. I am Saila Rinne, Head of Unit eHealth Wellbeing and Aging in DG Connect, and my unit is in charge of this initiative, but we are of course working very closely with other services of the European Commission and also external stakeholders. And today's speakers are also coming from both within DG Connect and other services and from outside the Commission. The Europe's Beating Cancer Plan remains a very relevant initiative also in the new Commission. Each year 2.7 million people in the European Union are diagnosed with cancer. So this affects many people around us, and it can affect ourselves as well one day. To be noted also that nearly 40% of these cases are preventable. So there is a lot to be done in the prevention side, and also technologies can help there. The European Cancer Imaging Initiative is one of the flagships of the Europe's Beating Cancer Plan, and the aim is to harness the power of data and AI to advance the fight against cancer for better prevention, but also for better personalized treatments and care options for cancer patients. At the core of this initiative and effort is the Cancer Image Europe. This is an infrastructure developed by the EUCAIM project, which will offer researchers and innovators secure access to large amounts of cancer image datasets, unlocking the development of AI tools to detect cancer sooner, faster, and more accurately. Digital innovation in healthcare and the AI and trustworthy AI that we are now very much supporting in the Commission are really also at the core of this initiative. Therefore, the discussion today on Cancer Imaging Initiative is very timely and relevant, and I'm very much looking forward to the presentations and discussions this morning. So now I'm handing over to Gaia Botura, my colleague, to explain the session more in detail. Gaia, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Saila. We can go on to the next slide. So before we jump right into the content of today's session, just a few rules of the game. You can interact through the Slido platform. You can type your questions in the chat. And then we'll have dedicated Q&A sessions for us to answer your questions. This session is being recorded, and you can access it later on the Connect University space on YouTube. And if you go on to the next slide. So what will happen during this session? So we will see different angles of the European Cancer Imaging Initiative. So first we will see what are the gaps and needs in medical imaging research, and then how the Cancer Image Europe infrastructure and this initiative are helping to fill in these gaps and address these challenges. Then we'll have the opportunity to hear from innovators directly, to see really how this initiative and infrastructure can support them in developing innovative AI tools for cancer. Then we'll have the first Q&A slot. And in the second segment of this session, we will see how the infrastructure is dealing with very sensitive health data, how they are handling them, and how what is their approach towards this sensitivity. And then we'll sort of look into the future perspectives of AI-based imaging solutions for cancer, first from the perspective of innovation, but also from the perspective of clinicians. So without further ado, I can first give the floor to my colleague, Alexandra, who will just present a few slides on the initiative before we delve into the discussion. So Alexandra, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Gaia, for this introduction and welcome to this Connect University session. So before we go to the presentations that Gaia mentioned, just a brief overview, a bit more detailed on how Saila introduced the session today. So the European Cancer Imaging Initiative is a flagship initiative of the Europe's Beating Cancer Plan, and it was launched by the Commission in December 2022. And the overall goal is to foster innovation and deployment of digital technologies, and in particular, those data-driven technologies and technologies based on artificial intelligence in cancer treatment and care. And we have launched, the Commission has launched this initiative to build on the work of the cluster of 5 research projects that we funded from the Horizon 2020 program, which have showed how imaging data can be used to develop AI solutions that can inform cancer treatment, cancer diagnosis and treatment. Because we know that for many cancer types, imaging data plays a very important role in the cancer pathway, supporting clinicians in diagnosing and treating cancer. So these 5 projects, which you can see on the slide, have developed new AI-based cancer imaging solutions for cancer management. They addressed different cancer types and showed they developed methodologies and tools that help data anonymization, protection, curation, harmonization, annotation, and quality, and they have proposed new approaches and methods how these solutions can be validated and then used in clinical practice. So based on that work, we have launched in 2022, at the end of 2022, the European Cancer Imaging Initiative. Next slide, please. And as was mentioned by Saila, at the core of the initiative is a deployment of this federated pan-European digital infrastructure for cancer images and related clinical data for AI development and testing. Because we know that quality data sets are needed for development and training of AI solutions. And currently this data is scattered and fragmented and not easy to access for research and innovation purposes. So under the Digital Europe program, we are funding the deployment of this Cancer Image Europe platform infrastructure, which addresses the fragmentation of the health data and in particular the radiological and nuclear medicine images. And it will support the development and validation of AI tools towards precision medicine. So the project started in January 2023, will run until December 2026. So now we are reaching mid-term of the project, and it's a large consortium which involves many clinical data providers, research institutes and industry stakeholders, and will provide large amounts of cancer imaging data which have been standardized, harmonized, and ready to be used to develop AI tools for precision medicine. And we have the scientific coordinator of the project with us today, Professor Louis Martí Bonmatí, who will talk after me, and Ignacio Blanquer, who is the coordinator of the core platform development, and he will provide more details on the imaging aspects and the platform development. Next slide, please. So from my side, just a few words what we expect. We expect that the project and the cancer image infrastructure by the end of 2026 will include over 60 million cancer images from over 100,000 patients, and that moreover, it will be an infrastructure that grows in terms of data resources it connects because of the approach, a federated data warehouse approach that has been developed, which makes it possible to deploy observational studies in a faster and more efficient way. And this approach will make it possible to continuously grow the amount of high quality cancer imaging data that is connected in Europe. And Ignacio will talk later about this in his presentation. So we hope that this data made available through this infrastructure will make it possible to develop and validate reproducible AI models in radiology and oncology, models that can then fulfill the regulatory requirements and also scale up better in the healthcare settings. So then we expect that this infrastructure will have impact on clinical pathways in radiology and oncology, and that will be further discussed by Professor Bonmatí and also by Professor Beat-Stan later in their intervention on how clinical problems can be solved with medical imaging and what is necessary to bring such imaging-based AI solutions to the clinical practice. Next slide, please. Briefly to show, I already said that it's a large consortium that is deploying the infrastructure, and the consortium already includes 21 clinical data providers from 12 countries. You can see a map on the slide. So different countries are already involved, 12 countries. The goal of the project in the next 2 years is to have 30 data providers from 15 countries, and several new data providers and additional countries will be joining the project in early 2025. Next slide, please. So this just to show that, of course, we have this main project, but there is a number of ongoing and upcoming actions to strengthen this effort and to build an ecosystem around it. So this year, 2024, there have already been a number of opportunities for stakeholders to join and engage in the Cancer Imaging Initiative. More opportunities will come next year. So, of course, on the project website, there is you can learn more on the activities conducted by the EUCAIM project itself. So there are stakeholder engagement activities and a dedicated stakeholder engagement team by the project. Ignacio will touch on it in his presentation. But from the Commission side, there is a number of activities that we are supporting. So in 2024, there was an open call to onboard new cancer image data holders for the new partners to join the project, and these will join early next year. Also this year, we had a call for proposals under the EU4Health program to support further integration of cancer imaging data into the infrastructure, in particular to then foster the uptake of AI in cancer screening programs. So here the focus was on federating new data sources and on the AI models and tools that can be used to support cancer screening. These projects are also scheduled to start next year. In Cancer Mission, there was a call on use cases for the UNCAN EU flagship, which is a flagship of Cancer Mission that supports research to understand cancer. And here in the successful project, it is also expected that at least one use case should integrate imaging data, digital pathology, and genomic data, and should use or contribute new data sources to the Cancer Image Europe platform. For this call, also the evaluation is currently ongoing. Furthermore, as for the next actions in the work program 2025 of the European Innovation Council, there is a Pathfinder challenge. The last speaker of today, Federica, will be touching upon this. So this is about generative AI-based agents to revolutionize medical diagnosis and treatment of cancer. And here also the proposers are encouraged to leverage the data and tools in the Cancer Image Europe platform and contribute the data sets and developed AI tools to the platform under agreed conditions. And finally, there's also the ongoing work to prepare for the implementation of the European Health Data Space Regulation. And there we will have a project funded under Digital Europe program starting early next year, which will look into how future health data access bodies in the EU countries can foster efficient pathways for deploying AI in healthcare. And in this context, they will explore how the EUCAIM platform can support that. So finally, there is also a thematic network. So it's more on the stakeholder engagement activities on advancing precision medicine for Europe's cancer patients with AI-powered imaging, led by the European Society of Radiology, and Professor Beetstan will talk about that. So that also has the EUCAIM is involved in that. Next slide, please. So this is just briefly to a take-home message, how we envisage the role of this initiative and on the created infrastructure in future. We believe that Cancer Image Europe can be an accelerator and facilitator for researchers, industry, and clinicians to design and run observational studies at hospitals and build reproducible image-based AI models in oncology. Also, we hope and we believe that by making reference datasets available, the infrastructure will help innovators validate AI solutions towards regulatory approval. We would like that the advanced data processing and analysis tools of the platform will help make the best use of AI in the context of cancer screening programs, so the prevention. And also, we hope that this effort will help the data holders who have the right, obligation, or capability to make certain data available for research purposes to comply with the GDPR and the upcoming European Health Data Space regulation, and indeed make then the imaging data and the clinical data available for research and innovation purposes. Next slide, please. And this is my last slide, just to say that if you would like to learn more, we will have a big event in February, 2 years after the launch of the initiative, in collaboration with the EUCAIM project and the European Society of Radiology. We are organizing this event in Brussels and online, where we will look into more detail in the achievements of the first years of the initiative, its future developments. We will discuss platform use cases and present new partners, and also discuss the role and the contribution of the cancer imaging initiative in the context of the implementation of the European Health Data Space, the role it can play in the context of the AI strategy, and then in general to advance the digital transformation of healthcare towards personalized cancer care. So if you would like to learn more, you can see at this event, you can find more information on the link on this slide. So with this, I finish, and I give the floor back to you, Gaia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. I'm happy to now give the floor to Professor Luis Bonmati, who will present what are the challenges and gaps, but also what are the opportunities in medical imaging research for cancer. So Professor Bonmati is the director of the Medical Imaging Department and Biomedical Imaging Research Group at Hospital Universitario y Politécnico La Fe and Health Research Institute in Valencia, Spain. And he's also the scientific director of the EUCAIM project. So Professor Bonmati, the floor is yours.
Well, thanks a lot. And thanks a lot, Alexandra and Saila, for the overview of the extremely important initiative. And I will try in these 10 minutes to summarize why working on AI, radiomics, imaging biomarkers, and prediction models is extremely important in personalized medicine. And I will focus on the gaps, the needs, and the opportunities that we do foresee in this research and clinical pathway or pipeline. So in the next slide, I will, next please. I will, well, first conflict of interest, so next one. Next slide, please. Okay, what we are trying to demonstrate is that medical images are used to solve clinical problems, and we have to keep focus on the clinical impact on whatever we are doing in healthcare. Whatever research is performed, where medical imaging, imaging biomarkers, radiomics, modalities are used, have to define a clinical problem to be addressed, and we have to, in some way, justify the use and need of medical images and AI approaches to solve that problem. And solving a problem through medical imaging means taking into account the technical aspects, but also the added value for the patients. And anytime we do foresee a paper or a solution or a change in how medicine is performed, we have to think if the results of those papers are actionable. And what do we mean by that? Is that, as an example in this paper from Insights into Imaging, we can identify through medical imaging radiomics if a malignant tumor in the liver, it has a specific phenotype, like a proliferative hepatocellular carcinoma. And does it change treatment allocation? Does it give us information on survival or time to recurrence? can we use that information in clinical practice? This is extremely important to be solved. Next, please. Also, we have to recognize in screening programs where medical imaging is used that images are extremely important to detect lesions when they can be treated, I mean, before they are symptomatic. But we also have another options to have a direct clinical impact. As an example, we can, by using AI, try to detect pre-tumoral niches, that means those changes on the parenchyma before the tumor develops. That's the preparation of the organ to the development of a tumor. And if we are able to do that with medical images, we will have an actionable result, meaning that follow-ups will have to do it much faster, in a shorter times, or even more important, we can maybe make a biopsy of those areas. Next. Also, next slide, please. Also, treatment sometimes fail. I mean, we know in medicine that some tumors, the recurrence rate is huge. Other ones is close to 50%, and we need to identify which patients will respond to an adequate treatment, such as immunotherapy, target therapies, or focal treatments, because by making this identification, we will allow patients who will not respond not to receive those treatments. And again, I mean, how can identify these patients for a better prognosis, higher probability to response will make a huge impact on the way medicine is performed. Next slide, please. And these are the gaps and needs and opportunities. This is a malignant tumor of the brain in a patient with seizures. Then after an MR, we now know that this is a glioblastoma, where it is located, size, edema, but still there is a huge amount of pieces of information that are not there. Are these unobservable structures, unrecognized targets, unnoticed alterations, variable disease behaviors, limited prognostications, and these are the issues that are mandatory to be identified through medical imaging, biomarkers, and radiomics to have a clinical impact on daily practice. Next, please. And how we do that? Well, we do that by identifying those biological or pathological changes through medical imaging that is used every time in the disease process. And as an example, these were just research results from decades before. We can identify through virtual biopsy the structure of bone, or the perfusion and neoangiogenesis of cartilage in osteoarthritis. So it's important that even through hypothesis-driven or experience-driven, our research have a clinical impact and will modify treatments and clinical pathways. Next, please. Next slide. This is an example of why it is needed. These are examples of patients with pancreatic cancer, where the huge one is engagement, the spleen artery, and it has a malignant prognosis and behavior, but radiomics show that the survival is large. And in the other one, which is a small tumor, we can identify through radiomics that survival is expected to be small. So radiomics will add value to medical images by providing information that is impossible to be obtained through the standard radiological reading. Next one, next please. And these are the radiomics. We do have so many ways to obtain much more data coming from medical images. The main trouble with radiomics and imaging biomarkers was that it's perfect when we perform them in a hospital, in a controlled environment, but we were not able to transfer those results to other hospitals, meaning that we have a crisis of reproducibility. In the next slide, please. This is an example. Although we have been working for years and years on phenotyping hepatocellular carcinoma, even today, treatment allocation is based on simple ways of analyzing the tumor, like tumor size, location, and number. And the reason why these radiomics are not transferred into clinical practice is mainly for this reproducibility crisis. There is a huge variability in medical images coming from different vendors, releases, protocols, and that limits innovation with quantitative biomarker. Next, please. And reproducibility is extremely important. This is how AI can help radiologists and physicians to have more reproducible results, detecting, extracting, and obtaining features from medical images of tumors, irrespectively of the vendor, the modality, and the location of the tumor. Next, please. Next slide. And an integrated diagnosis is also mandatory. We recognize that it's not only medical imaging and radiomics, the modalities that will provide an answer to the patient. We have to integrate that with genetic data, molecular data, and clinical data to obtain the best prediction models in clinical practice. And in this example, coming from pretty much research projects funded by Horizon 2020, we did incorporate in the prediction models of risk stratification in patients with neuroblastoma, MR magnetic resonance images that were harmonized, radiomic features that were extracted and integrated with the genetic and molecular alterations, and risk stratification improved by using this methodology. So we did provide a clinical impact on what we were doing. Next slide, please. To do that properly, we have to recognize that radiomics and artificial intelligence is providing us a tool to solve a clinical gap, be reproducible, actionable, changing treatments, and universally validated in all this ecosystem of actions that we perform through medical imaging. Next slide, please. And EUCAIM, as we learn, to help radiologists and researchers through the contribution by exposing a huge amount of data and tools, also by creating research communities of people, researchers, clinicians, engineers, related to solve specific problems and contributing, therefore, to Europe's Beating Cancer Plan. And as we will see later, this transition from research to clinical practice is extremely relevant, and we will touch that on the thematic network where EUCAIM and AVIR and the European Society of Radiology are willing to integrate diagnostics information to provide patients with precision medicine. Next, please. Next slide. And I do think that was my presentation. Thanks a lot. I'm happy to have questions after the other presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Bonmati. Now that we have seen what medical imaging can do for cancer research and its potential, let's delve into how the Cancer Image Europe infrastructure is contributing to filling these gaps and addressing challenges, but also harnessing all of the opportunities. So I will now give the floor to Professor Ignacio Blanquer. He's full professor in the Universitat Politécnica de Valencia and vice director of the Institute of Instrumentation for Molecular Imaging. He is technical responsible person of the EUCAIM Central Hub, and he's also a member of the board of directors of the European Open Science Cloud Association, and has served as an expert to the Spanish Ministry of Science in e-science, being also the Spanish delegate of the Infrastructures Reflection Group. So, Ignacio, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Gaia, and thank you very much for this opportunity to explain the inner details of the cancer image infrastructure. So I will start with a poll. So next slide. There's a poll in the slide. I mean this one, an early one, the one that they see appearing. Okay, no worries. Maybe we can simply go to. Yeah, there was a poll. No worries about. The meaning of the word FAIR, right? FAIR, it's an acronym, and I mean, teasing you about what was exactly what was the meaning, right? If you want to guess what will be the meaning of FAIR, I mean, I see that most of the people know, but there are many other valid, I would say, even acronyms. Expansion for it. So it goes to 4 pillars, 4 challenges: findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability. I will try to map this infrastructure towards these 4 challenges, and also mapping this to the health data space data user journey. So next slide. So our infrastructure follows to address 2 types of problems. On one side, on the right side, we have the availability of data that already is there, data that is available from research infrastructures. And on the left side is what also Alexander was commenting, the capability of developing observational studies in which data will be collected on demand from the data holders, from real world data, mapping the same approach that the European health data space will be following in the short future. So next slide. So let's go to first motivate the innovation. The objective of this platform. I mean, this platform is for research, but it's also, and this is very important, for innovation. You will see this topic developed later on in the presentation from Dr. Angela Parik. So the translation of AI tools to clinical practice requires a lot of effort, as Professor Martí was presented before, and requires certifications of the software. This certification of the software, which is really boosting, I mean, you can see that there are close to 700 certified tools for AI in medical practice, require having very high level of quality of data, and this costs a lot of resources, a lot of money. And therefore, having these data sets well prepared, high quality, would be really very convenient for boosting the industry and the innovation in this area. So next slide. So next slide, please. Yeah, can we have? Yeah. Okay. So what the European cancer imaging infrastructure is aiming for? We are aiming to 4 types of users, 4 user roles. We want to provide the users that want to access the data and develop their new tools, a set of data sets, a high quality data for their research and innovation. We also would like data holders that have data and want to preserve this data and make this available for the community, to have a way to publish this data and to also persist this data when the clinical trials end. Also, software developers to contribute to a marketplace that will be key for the medical doctors and also for the innovators to find solutions that could help them to build this set of tools and products based on AI. And finally, this community of stakeholders that will contribute through these observational studies. So next slide. So you can see all the links in our platform. So let's go to the first challenge, findability. The approach of EUCAIM is to reduce this fragmentation of different silos with different repositories that are available and spread all over Europe, with a common entry point that will facilitate to find data set that fulfills your needs. And one of the tools that we are developing is the Federated Explorer, which is a tool in which you can find data sets that fulfill a set of specific inclusion criteria. You, define which is the criteria that you want to search for, and the tool will return you the data sets that fulfill those criteria and the number of subjects each data set has. This is really a key element for going to the next step of preparing an application for accessing this data. Next slide. So the second is, I have found the right data sets. Now I want to access them. But accessing sensitive data, it is not straightforward. I mean, we cannot provide open access to every data set. I mean, this will be impossible due to the legal conditions of the data that is available. And therefore, we have integrated a negotiation system in which the users provide an application in which they define which are the purpose of the access, which are the expected benefits, which are the expected results, the materials, the methods, and an ethical approval for this specific project. Then this is evaluated along with the different licenses or conditions, usage conditions of the dataset requested, and this negotiation phase ends up with granting access to these datasets. So next slide. So we have found datasets, we have requested access to the datasets, and then we want to ensure that data is interoperable because we are merging data that come from different sources, from different countries, from different projects. And for that, we have developed a common data model and hyperontology that is targeted towards the specific terms and terminologies of the cancer imaging, and collects and makes all the data in the terms of the specifications interoperable. We also have adopted the DCAT API specification, or we are fulfilling all the different fields and following very closely all the specifications in the health DCAT API, which is the major specification of the European health data space for defining the metadata of the collections. And DCAT API is a standard defined and really boosted by the European Commission. So we have fair data points that makes this data interoperable and comparable. And that's what we follow in order to make this homogeneous. And next slide, that's the final challenge, which is the reusability. And the reusability means that we cannot give the data easily to the researchers. I mean, we have to ensure the traceability, but at the same time, we have to provide an environment in which the innovators and the developers can process this data. So we provide virtual research environment with secure and secure storage and secure processing in order to make the data available to them and process and get and train the AI models. We provide high-end computing facilities in which these models can be trained there. We provide both a virtual research environment which the data can be seen but not downloaded. You can process in situ, but you cannot take the data out because this will break our data sharing and data transfer agreements, and a federated processing environment in which you can even you cannot see for those data that even cannot be seen by the users, but can be processed by moving the processing to where the data is located. So we have covered these 4 challenges: finding, accessing, interoperable data, and reusability. And next slide, we will talk a bit in the next slide, please, about how do we tackle this in our federation. So next slide. In this, EUCAIM aims a federation. So it means that we have some reference storages in which we can gather data from other providers, anonymized data that has been completed from some studies or once released or cannot be stored at the premises of the data holder, and also provide means to link existing data warehouses and processing endpoints of the federation. So we provide 3 levels of federation, 3 compliance levels. First level, tier 1, at the level of the catalog. EUCAIM has a central catalog, and we index there all the data that is available in the federation. And we provide the means to integrate other catalogs to automatically harvest this data and make this available in the registry, as it is made in other types of information like publications. This is tier 1. Tier 2 goes a higher level of integration and means discoverability. We have the data discoverable through our Federated Explorer. This means that we have to provide access to the data by the tool. This is not trivial and requires, in many cases, that we have signed data sharing agreements in order to be able that the data searches, although that it provides only aggregated information, but it requires data sharing agreements, and therefore we have on a separate level of integration and compliance. And the third level is the processing, which we have to ensure the maximum compatibility and the interoperability at the level of the full ontology. Next slide, I'll try to summarize in one view all this architecture. We have several architecture documents, a lot of information about how all these different components are developed, are integrated and made available. I'll try to, in a nutshell, try to give you the view. So we have these two approaches. Data is transferred to our reference nodes, in which we have storage capacity, processing capacity, anonymized. And for those cases, data holders sign this data transfer agreement. And then we have the other cases, data holders that share the data, but they don't move the data from their premises. So we have this central hub, which is the key part that provides the access for the users. From the central hub, we have a dashboard, and then that gives entry to the different applications. This federated search, this central catalog, and this distributed processing, as well as monitoring tool, help desk, and other additional services. So then each one of the providers, research infrastructures, data holders, has to prepare a service for the harvesting of the registry data in the catalog, a service for the integration and the transformation of the queries of the federated search into the specific format of their searching endpoints, and a service for preparing the data for the distributed federated processing. So it means that these individual components allow the data holders to have their own methodology for keeping the data, but at the same time being compliant to the different tiers of EUCAIM by providing these adaptation plugins that transform the data. This way is progressive, so it can be tackled and you can get the compliance to the different tier levels one by one without disturbing your, the way in which you are managing your local storage and fulfilling your research users. So that was all from the part of the infrastructure. So in the next slide, you can see our timeline. We are reaching the final release of the platform in which all the tools are made available. We have just made the last version, the last update of the negotiator, the federated search, and the catalog in the last week. So we are just preparing the final version of all the tools for facing 2025 in the process of supporting the research community and the innovators using the data and processing and developing their own system. So get in touch, and we will be really happy to support your research and your innovation. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Now let's move on to the last presentation before the Q&A. I see that you have already typed a lot of questions in the chat, so we'll answer those later. So now we'll hear the innovator's perspective from Angel Albrich Bayari from Quibim to really see how the EUCAIM infrastructure can boost AI innovation for cancer care. So Angel Albrich Bayari is the CEO and co-founder of Quibim, which is a global company specializing in the design and development of pioneering tools that combine advanced medical imaging analysis and AI to achieve a more precise diagnosis and tailored treatments. His latest solutions have focused on cancer detection and prediction. And he holds a degree in telecommunications engineering from Polytechnic University of Valencia and a PhD in biomedical engineering. He's also an inventor of 6 patents, and he has received numerous international awards for his innovative career, including being named one of the MIT's innovators under 35. So without further ado, Angel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gaia. Thank you, Saila and Alexandra as well for the session. So, I would like to start highlighting that, AI innovation in healthcare in general is expensive. It needs accessing like different repositories and data sets in research collaboration agreements within different hospitals, point to point, hospital by hospital, IRB by IRB, which is pretty time consuming for companies that are trying to develop new AI algorithms for support in detection or diagnosis of the disease. And not taking into account the lack of data homogeneity or lack of consistency that you might get when you are collecting all those huge amounts of information point to point. And I would like to state that in Europe, we have an opportunity of working together to simplify this path, and EUCAIM is the main solution for that. So how can we boost this kind of AI innovation in Europe? If we go to the next slide. Yeah, perfect. So I think that the first thing we can do is to start by questioning ourselves on why. Why do we have this kind of program? I really like to go back to the basics. And of course, we have a scientific impact in programs like Horizon Europe. But we in Europe have already proven our scientific capabilities. We are quite good at that. But it turns out that the societal and economical impact are kind of pending tasks, as I'm not the only one saying this. It can be derived as well from the recent Mario Draghi's report on the European competitiveness and the future of the EU. And I would say that that is precisely the main focus of EUCAIM, of Cancer Image Europe. So I would like to put the focus on the second and the third row, on the societal impact and the economic impact. And if we go to the next slide, I would like to start by the patient on top, right? If we think about patients, I would question as well, what do us all need to make patients benefit from the results of Cancer Image Europe? But not only to benefit, but to benefit in clinical practice, So in the end, I would say that patients benefit from these kind of solutions or algorithms when we are able to deploy them in clinical practice under the concept, and here it comes when we have AI and when we use AI to determine a diagnosis or to detect a disease. Mainly, it is because we are going to use so-called a medical device. Even if it is software, we are manufacturing or digitally manufacturing these medical devices. So what does this mean? Let's go to the next slide. So as something that is manufactured, in this case in Europe under the MDR, the medical device regulation, it must follow some kind of process or a standard. In our case, in the case of medical devices, the main standard is the ISO 13485, which is the way we manufacture, we create those algorithms. And this is an harmonized standard for the quality management system on this manufacturing process to ensure quality of the output, to ensure that the algorithms that we create can measure aspects from the human body or findings accurately, in a reproducible way, in a trustworthy way. And all that QMS, as you can see on the image on the left, is basically to support the product realization phase. Though that product realization phase has an input and an output. In the area of AI, we can think on the requirements of a product, we can think on the data that we need to train a product or an AI model. And in the end, the output will be basically the information that will be facing doctors and facing patients. No? And then we will have other aspects like the feedback, or for example, the performance surveillance after the algorithms are deployed. But let's not forget that in Europe, we are not only working under the MDR, or the medical device regulation, we also have other regulations that we need to put together and to work on the intersection. And the three main ones that we are working on right now are the medical device regulation, the GDPR, and the AI Act. So the companies like EUCAIM, but so many others working in this space, in the end, must work on this intersection. No? So how can we fulfill the requirements from the three of them? No? And for example, when we think of AI applied to detection or diagnosis of the disease, within the AI Act, we are considered high risk. These kind of algorithms are high risk. And from all the requirements we must have, there are two that I would highlight that EUCAIM would help to foster, no? and to make sure we can keep under control. One of them is the data governance. So make sure we are using high quality and biased data for training. Another one is related to record keeping. We need to maintain transparency for all audits and these kind of purposes. No? So this is to try to present the regulatory landscape of innovators in Europe. If we can go to the next slide. Yeah. So this is an example of this manufacturing process as we have implemented in EUCAIM, but each company might have their own. In our case, as a biopharma would have as well. No, when we think of biopharma companies, and it is a nice way to understand it, biopharma companies might work with a lot of candidate molecules in drug discovery. No, they might have millions of candidate molecules that might evolve to product. But the percentage of molecules that end up being a product in clinical practice is pretty small, right? Is even lower than 1%. So in our case, the way we detect new potential algorithms, new potential applications, is to think on accessing huge amounts of data by which we can test which biomarkers, which radiomics features might be or might have predictive or prognostic value, and then evolve them into what can become into a product, right? And the product can be commercialized in providers, as we can see in the right side of the slide. And here I put three examples, no, of three products that we are commercializing right now at EUCAIM on AI algorithms for brain, for detecting Alzheimer's disease and multiple sclerosis, algorithms for prostate cancer, and algorithms for metabolic syndrome or liver, diffuse liver diseases. No? But in the end, these are products that is a limited number as compared to the huge amount of research on different algorithms we are working on to evaluate. What can make an algorithm not go to market? Of course, one of the main causes can be the price, the cost of developing it. I mean, companies might think very carefully when to invest in an algorithm. If the investment is done, it's because there has to be an area in the market where that algorithm might fit. We also look for alignment with the clinical guidelines, the cost of implementation. If an algorithm is easy to develop, but then the implementation in clinical practice might be intricate, this might be also a stopper. And also, the regulatory clearance. In the end, for regulatory clearance, we need evidence. And that evidence means being able to test and validate the algorithm with a decent amount of data as to support the statistical power that is needed. So in that sense, that's why I try to compare the process to the process of developing a drug with all the differences and the lower cost, of course, in our case. But in the end, it shouldn't be overlooked. Next slide, please. Yeah. So my vision is that EUCAIM will help to catalyze and promote the industry of medical devices for cancer and medical imaging in Europe. Mainly, the companies developing these kind of tools are companies like us, AI and medical imaging, also OEMs, equipment manufacturers, and providers of PACS and EHR. And if we think what could be a KPI of success, well, we expect, thanks to EUCAIM, a growth in the number of certified AI medical devices in Europe in the era of EUCAIM versus the era of pre-EUCAIM, right? And why we think about that, if we can go to the next slide, it's like how much does it cost, right, to create one of these algorithms? Well, the main interest is to facilitate the access to data and decrease the cost of developing new AI products. No, we believe that lower cost will lead to more products and more access. No, companies like the ones dedicated to AI and imaging basically will be able to not only access data, but also benefit from a higher quality in the generation of these data sets and a higher consistency and completeness. No? If we think on the cost today, around 80% of the cost of developing a new algorithm goes to all the time you spend in data collection, in the data organization, cleaning it, annotating, and curation. In the end, that makes, and this is not, I would say, any number. This is a quite comprehensive publication after analyzing all the clear products that there exist nowadays. In this case, it's in the US. It's from the Journal of the American College of Radiology. But the data we have is that, you know, if we look at all the investment that has been made from private investment for developing new products, we have around 11.3 products for every 1 billion in funding, which in the end is translated into an average of $88 million per product, which is a significant amount, right? And as I was saying, around 80% of this money is dedicated to the time spent on data collection and data management. So as per our estimations, thanks to EUCAIM, if instead of spending 1 year or 2 years managing this data, we can make companies have a quicker access to higher quality data, moving down the time to 3 months, 6 months, we can be talking about around 60% reduction in cost of developing new algorithms in Europe. So I think this is the real strength. EUCAIM can create a business model for that, where the access to the platform can really foster innovation in Europe, making Europe 60% more competitive, no? as it is today. And I think it's a great impact. So last slide. So to summarize, no, I think that the industry will have in EUCAIM an efficient platform for accessing data for research, development and validation of new products ready for market launch. Also reducing the product costs that right now are as high as I shared, increasing access for healthcare centers and patients, and finally leading to an enhanced competitiveness in the international landscape that we need in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angel. Now we can move on to the first Q&A session. Let's try to answer all of the questions. So first, I think there were some questions on the data included in the platform. So maybe this is for Professor Bramati and Professor Blanker. So how do you incentivize continuous data submission of data to the platform?
Yeah, we will try to do it fast because we are short of time, but to summarize, we have as many use cases as researchers are willing to collaborate with us. So the platform is not limited to any cancer type, and it's not limited to any modality. We are using MR, CT, ultrasound, plain films, mammography. So it's extremely open. And regarding the cooperation of new stakeholders and partners, we did finalize the open call, so now we are 94, I guess, and we do foresee new partners to be incorporated as stakeholders, meaning that we do have really a work package for that. Please send us an email, mainly to me, and we will go back to you sharing how to be incorporated within the EUCAIM.
If I can continue, there's also, I mean, totally agree with this, but there's also in the our dashboard page there, in the part of becoming a member or a stakeholder, I mean, there is a form in which you can fill in, and then we can keep in contact more directly, and this enter in our structured database. That's perfect. I mean, I will take also a couple of questions that I've seen there. One related to the proportion of data in different tiers. I mean, it is not that important that the data is in tier 3. Tier 2 means that it is discoverable, but tier 3 means that it is available for the federated processing. But if you request, which in many cases this is the normal case, data from a specific data set that is from one provider, then this provider can, give you access to this data set. And if it is not fully compliant with the model of hyperontology of EUCAIM, that's not a big issue if you deal with only this data set. So the full compliance of the hyperontology is absolutely necessary for the federated processing, but for going to the BRE, you can access the data, you will see that it's properly documented with all the metadata information. And yeah, for the continuous data submission, we have to sign the data sharing and data transfer agreement. But again, this is done through the stakeholder forum. So you enter in the dashboard page and you go there. In the dashboard page, you will see all the instructions for becoming a user, a data holder, a stakeholder, and all the different points.
Thank you very much. I think the following question is more directed towards Angel. So how do you expect that the platform and the initiative will help concretely bring the solutions to the market, the new innovations that are developed?
Well, I think that having access to common environment where you can have a kind of one-stop shop scenario, where you can have access to search for the adequate data sets based on some criteria. Of course, the data will not be all of it centralized, but definitely we will be able to make requests on those data, being able to train within the platform, being able to as well create complete traceability. And I think it's very important that companies might see in EUCAIM how to ensure that AI Act accomplishment, right, on the audits availability and how the responsibilities are going to be shared. But companies will be able to centralize their data collection and development efforts within EUCAIM. That leads in a reduction of time, of course. Right now, as I was sharing, average time we can spend in data collection for a new product it can be 1-2 years. There is a business on data brokers as well everywhere, which sometimes is not easy to identify high quality data versus low quality data, and it's too much of a risk for companies that are starting to engage in just inorganic purchase of data, which is not good. And I think EUCAIM can become a trusted environment for manufacturing medical devices following the AI Act, following GDPR, following MDR, as we have to do it. No? And that, I would say, the highest impact is on the high quality of the data, reducing the time, and that leads to lower costs. No? And that means that probably those lower costs mean that we can cover this development with investments in the range of Europe. No? Right now we are having So average Series A, average fundings that are shorter to this 88 million I was sharing. And that means that companies sometimes need to raise in the US. And I think with EUCAIM, we can make companies to develop medical devices completely in Europe without the need to requiring international funding, so to say.
Thank you very much.
Can I also go to that question on how do you incentivize continuous data submission, because that's extremely important, and I will do it quite short, because in some way we are looking for to enlarge the research community, to enlarge the innovators, and to transfer whatever we are doing to clinical practice to improve patients' healthcare conditions. And we want to do that allowing clinicians and radiologists and engineers, AI scientists, to be part of a community that is going to make a revolution in medicine. We are fostering medical imaging radiomics precision models to help that precision and personalized medicine with the reuse of data, being part of projects, to be engaged on developments, to be really being part of this new pathway of personalized medical imaging that we are constructing with the infrastructure. So the best way to collaborate is being part, incentivize not only data, also software reuse, and not only data and software, also being part of a research community where we want to solve clinical problems. So that's the message for incentivize partners.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask one last question, but maybe we can keep the answer super short. So somebody asked, as an external, when will I be able to request access to the data?
Maybe Nacho, because we already started. No, we do have an access committee who is already active. So please go.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we are now in the process of the internal validation, and as soon as we close some of the final versions of the tools, we will open to external validation. So it will be on the beginning of the next year. So we will, for the external people, we will, announce it very clearly on our dissemination channels.
Perfect. Thank you very much for answering that short and straight to the point. Then now we can move on to the next slide and the next segment of this session. So we know that health data is extremely sensitive, and ensuring safety and security in health data is, of course, very important for trust and uptake of innovation in digital health. So how is EUCAIM doing this? I would like now to give the floor to János Mészáros. He has been a postdoctoral researcher at KU Leuven University Faculty of Pharmaceutical Science and the Center for IT and IP Law since 2021. And he's specializing in data protection, AI, and medical law. And he also holds a PhD from the University of Szeged in data protection. So without further ado, János, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gaia. Can you hear me clearly? Great. Then we can go to my first slide, please.
Alex, yep.
Yes, I see. Thank you. So in EUCAIM, we have to deal with a very, very, very wide range of legal and ethical issues and challenges, which before in the three previous presentations were already highlighted. So here we need a very diverse team here. which not only consists lawyers, but also, for example, Professor Isabel Reyes from Biomedical Sciences and Francisco Soriano as an IT security expert. Next slide, please. As it was highlighted before, the importance of health data in cancer research is utmost. It can help develop AI models for early cancer detection, improve personalized treatment options, and use of real-world evidence to advance cancer research. Next slide, please. So EUCAIM aims to be part of the European health data space. And I would like to shortly show you how the European health data space, shortly EHDS, will work, and how data sharing is a key for research and how it will work in it. Next slide, please. To use an imaginary restaurant as an example in a secondary use of health data in the EHDS, imagine that the health data holder is the chef who is making the food, which is the data, and the data user, researcher, is the data-hungry guest in this restaurant. And here, as I mentioned, the food is the data, and the European health data space is the waiter. And in this picture, EUCAIM will be between the health data holder and the health data user as part of the European health data space in the future. Next slide, please. So going to a real-world example from our kitchen, from our imaginary restaurant, here, as you see, the chef is the health data holder, which can be, for example, a hospital, a research institute, and the health data user on the other end can be a researcher, AI developer, for example, and in the middle, the health data space, deciding how data can be shared and managing it, is the health data access body. It's very important here. The data will be shared in a secure processing environment. The standard rule is that it should be shared only in anonymized format. And when it is not possible to reach the goals of the research, then with specific safeguards in a secure processing environment, it is possible to process the data in a pseudonymized format. Next slide, please. Data protection, as it was highlighted before the presentations, it is especially crucial here because of the sensitive nature of health data. EUCAIM complies with the General Data Protection Regulation, as you know, the GDPR, to protect privacy. I would like to just shortly highlight some key data protection measures. There are encryptions during data storage and transfer, regular security audits, and data is stored securely and used only for agreed purposes in a secure processing environment, providing many layers of security and data protection. Next slide, please. Since medical images are crucial for cancer research, it is very important to reuse them for research. However, a medical anonymization of a medical image is challenging, but the EUCAIM's team, our researchers, are doing their best to anonymize those images, to make them ready for researchers and also protect the patients whose images are used. At this example, for example, a face is removed. And from this picture, if someone looks on it, you cannot tell whose medical image is this without any additional information. Next slide, please. I would like to shortly talk about ethics because it is also crucial. So the EUCAIM ethical framework governs that how data is accessed, shared, and preserved, following the strictest ethical guidelines. We ensure that patients' rights are respected, and we have transparent processes for ethical approval of research projects. Next slide, please. Since we have a lot of ethical, legal, and social implication, we do our best to constantly assess the ethical, legal, and social risks. We are constantly engaged with ethical committees, policymakers, patient advocacy groups, and we are proactively addressing societal concerns about the use of AI. Next slide, please. As it was highlighted before, it is a crucial element in the protection of privacy of the patients that EUCAIM uses a federated learning approach. This means that the data stays at the source. AI models are trained across multiple institutions without sharing raw data. So for example, a data in your local hospital stays there. It does not leave it. So what are the benefits? Privacy is maintained, and there is still a collaboration across borders to increase cancer research. Next slide, please. And in the end, I would like to mention AI ethics and how we comply with that, because it is especially crucial as the future of cancer research. Next slide, please. In our AI research endeavors and providing data and images for AI research, we are doing our best to comply with the European Union's AI Act and all the guidelines related to ethical use of AI. Just a few examples how we build trustworthy AI and how we help researchers to build trustworthy AI. For example, we strive to provide explainable results so patients and doctors can also understand the outcomes of the AI applications. We do our best to help reducing bias and ensure fairness. So these algorithms work as well on everyone, every patient who are using them. And we do our best for continuous monitoring for accuracy and reliability. But of course, because of the time constraints, I could talk about 1 more hours what safeguards we are doing for legal and ethical compliance in EUCAIM. If you would like to hear more about it, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thanks again for the organizers and my colleagues for making this presentation and whole EUCAIM possible. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you, Janos. Now, in the final segment of this session, we will look into future perspectives of AI imaging solutions for cancer. So first, I will give the floor to Federica Zanca from the EU Executive Agency for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises. And secondly, we will hear the clinician's perspective from Professor Regina Bitztan. So now I'm happy to give the floor to Federica for this first part.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me and see me well? Yes, very good. So thank you very much for the invitation. I am delighted to be here. And it was a pleasure to listen to the presentation of my colleagues because they are very instrumental to what I'm going to present you, which is about indeed innovation, market uptake, and trends in research. Next slide, please. So what I want to show you here is, so on the left, you see a graph figure, which is taken from a publication, which is actually from 2020, where it is shown that 80% of all FDA and MDR cleared AI algorithms, which are used for patient care, are in medical imaging. So why it is so important, this topic, is because really the bulk of the AI development is really in medical imaging. And if we look on the right, we summarize what are the most common application of AI tools in medical imaging. Some of them have already been mentioned by my colleagues. So we have a detection cluster, characterization cluster, and monitoring and progression of disease. And here there is also a part which is not contemplated, which is the use of AI for non-interpretative tasks, so non-related to imaging evaluation, like workflow optimization, for example, radiology report augmentation, which are also very, very important. And of course, in each of these, I would say, subject, there are several applications which have been put on the market since several years, and I do not have the time to go through each of them, but I would say the most common are related, for example, to breast, which is one of the most advanced, certainly in the added value, but also lungs, in PET, and so on. Next slide, please. So this is a very dense slide, and you would say, well, I don't read anything about it. That's not the point. Indeed, I don't expect you to read. I will tell you what it is about. This is another publication also from 2021. And what is interesting here is the following. It's a list of all application. I mean, I took a part of the figure because it's very long, where you see, for example, for breast, cardiac, chest, a lot of AI application on the market. And in yellow, you see when they've been brought to the market. So you see the timeline. It's a bit small, but let's say the timeline where the product has been brought to the market in yellow, okay? And then you see in yellow is the company funded. Then in red, you have the product brought to the market. And in light blue, you have the clinical evidence generation, meaning research showing the clinical value of the application. So what you can see from this, just looking at it, you can see that the company have been founded, and then the time to bring the product to the market is relatively long. But most striking is that there is really very little clinical evidence, except, for example, for breast. ScreenPoint has a lot of applications, paper on clinical evidence generation. But we really see that there is a struggle in generating clinical evidence, which is associated with the generation of real-world data, which are so important to bring this, to show the value of this application. That's the message I wanted to give you with this dense figure. Next slide, please. If we look at the market, because we do have a lot of application, as I say, we can see that in general, so I took the data from different sources. So you see dots because these are the value reported by the different sources, but let's say the bar is the median of the different sources. What you can see is that in healthcare in general, between 2021 and 2030, there is a huge growth expected, 37%. And if we focus in medical imaging, is 35%. If we break it down also for different modalities, we see that CT and MRI are those for which the increase is going to be the largest. And the 27% is just the average across the different, 34 is the maximum and 27 is the average of the different sources. So why, if we do have expectation on this large growth, why don't we have this application really used in clinical practice? Because if they would be used so much, we would have much more publication, clinical evidence generation, and so on. So next slide, please. So despite this investment, the adoption at scale is still not there. And there is really an issue because this solution remain limited to very specific applications. So they are very narrow, as we said, for example, in chest detection of lungs, but radiologists want to see if you have emphysema or other type of disease. So they would like a whole disease spectrum application. They are channeled to one modality and not really cross modality or related to a specific disease state. Next slide, please. And why is that? So there were animation in the slide, so I guess it has been translated into PDF, which is a bit of a pity because I also see that below some of the text is gone. So I apologize for that. I had created the animation. Anyhow, I will try to go like this. So please forget about the right. I will talk about later and we'll go step by step. So what are the challenges that hinder large scale adoption? So the first is inadequate data training, yes, of the application, meaning data scarcity and generalizability. And we see that EUCAIM can really play a big role. The second I already mentioned is narrow applicability of the application. With this, we need application that covers different disease for the same anatomical area, for example. There is a huge lack of AI model interpretability and explainability. As of today, most of them are really black box. And if you go back to the company to ask, okay, how is this reached? How is this calculation? It's not always easy to understand. Also because the model themselves are not being built by default to be explainable. We have regulatory hurdles. I think these are known to all of you, the MDR and the GDPR, and which are very important regulation and needed regulation, makes things more difficult. And that's why infrastructure like EUCAIM and also other are very important for that. Another challenge is the clinical validation and adoption. So I showed you through this graph, we don't have a lot of clinical validation, except for some exception. And, you know, it's like we don't understand if it is because the adoption is low. And why is the adoption low from radiologists? Why they are so suspicious for certain application? Then we also have quality assurance and post-market surveillance. So this is are mandatory in the MDR, also the post-market surveillance. But up to today, there are not really clear tools on how you can follow up how an application is evolving over time. It is not because an application is at 100% of day one that it will be the same after 1 year. For example, you could have data drifting, changes in population, which could impact the performance of the application. And the last and a very important point is the economic model and the return of investment. We struggle to show the economic model, the possible reimbursement scheme, and return on investment. And don't get me wrong, this is not about economic gain. Of course, it is societal impact. If we can detect cancer earlier, we can treat earlier, we can maybe save life, and that's also part of the economic model. Now, the second part of the slide would show up now, and I would like to tell you where the research trends are today and why they are there. They are there to try to answer the challenges that I just listed. For example, if we talk about data training, data scarcity, generalizability, there is a huge research going on, especially with the emerging technology of generative AI in the generation of synthetic images. So the use of synthetic images can be very valuable when we have to help, of course, in the generation of extra data when we have the problem of data scarcity, of data generalizability, but also to address some regulatory issue. If we think about narrow application, more and more there are multimodal AI models which are being developed, and this is not only about mixing different modalities, sorry, I couldn't come on the name, like CT, MRI, ultrasound, but it is really about integrated diagnosis, as Professor Bonamati mentioned. So we want to go much behind the imaging. We need to have pathology data, radiomics data, genetics data, structured and unstructured data, which needs to be integrated to have a real assessment and value of this model. Lack of interpretability and explainability. So there is more and more research going on in the development of models which are built by default. So in the way they are built, they include and incorporate explainability. There is some literature saying that they are less performing. I think there are a bit of controversial results. Or you have models which are developed specifically to interpret the result of the AI model meant for a specific task. So you have them, explainable by default, or a second model built to explain the model. So there is a lot of research going on, and this is because we need this interpretability. For regulatory hurdles, there is a lot going on in terms of standardization of validation frameworks and standards. So also Angel mentioned the ISO, which are followed by the company. At RSNA, there was this new word, which was AI cards, which is a kind of, it doesn't follow really standards, but it's a kind of framework to report on the way your AI model has been developed, tested, and so on. If we go back now to quality assurance and post-market surveillance, there have been some works done on real-time monitoring and continuous learning of AI application. So most of these applications, if not all, are frozen, meaning that when they get the MDR of the FDA, the model is defined. I think the FDA now has an approach for, a forecast of changes that you can foresee in a certain period of time without having to reapply. But in any case, there is no there are not really models which do monitoring of the AI application interaction with the radiologist. Was the reported result of the AI really correct, or did the radiologist changed? I mean, at least in his report. And if it changed, can we give it back to the AI system such that it can learn? And the last point, which you cannot read very much, is the economic model return on investment. So this challenge, there is a lot of health economic research going on. There are studies going on type of reimbursement, accreditation. But again, it is very difficult to find a model that fits all different applications. Next slide, please. So just to give you an example, this is a company funded by the European Innovation Council, which is called Radium, which is addressing some of these challenges, especially the underutilization of data. And you probably have heard of radiologist burnout because of the large amount of workload. And the objective of this company is to use generative AI, specifically large vision, so they work on images, language model. It's a multitask foundation model, which aims at addressing the fact that applications are narrow. So they address with this model all organs, all disease for CT and MRI, or at least that's what they are trying to develop. They focus on detection, segmentation, and classification, and these are the type of biomarkers that they address, but they don't stop here. They're also envisioning a new way of PACS. The PACS is the way the radiologist interacts with the images and generates a report. So they are thinking about interactivity with the model directly. So what I just told you, continuous learning. So they give feedback to the model so that they can be explained. They have action on triage, triggering for prioritizing casing with respect to the other. And I do also have a patient context that can guide the model. So following on that, next slide, please. I would like to just spend a few words on something that also Alexandra mentioned already, which is a new funding opportunity of the European Innovation Council Work Program 2025. This is a very dense slide. The only thing I want to remember is that we do have Pathfinder, which is very low TRL research, so very low technology readiness, meaning really exploratory research. We have a challenge, so a topic, an opportunity, which is on generative AI-based agents to revolutionize medical diagnosis and treatment of cancer. And here what it is important is the word agents. So I think it is a word which is emerging, agentic AI. These are AI application where the model is really taking into account different type of data at the same time, doing reasoning, reading images, and trying to produce an outcome. I don't have the time to go into the detail of that, but I encourage you eventually to scan the QR code and get more information. And the second one is a much higher technology readiness level. So almost a product which is also on generative AI and the use of large language model to augment the radiology report. This is not directly on cancer, but of course, to diagnose, to write a report on all cancer images, this is also very relevant. Next slide, please. So what are the specific objectives of this challenge? We aim at AI-based tool and architecture for integration of multimodal, multidimensional data. So different modalities, different type of data, structure, not structure, tools for data augmentation, so also generation of synthetic data, and also tools and architecture for medical knowledge representation and integration, meaning tools that are able, by putting all the data together, to see correlation, relevant information that the radiologist sometimes is missing because of a too large amount of data. And we would like these models to be applied in clinical practice to develop autonomous agents for predictive diagnosis and for personalized treatment of cancer. And all of this by taking into account ethical consideration, bias mitigation, uncertainty is a big issue in generative AI, explainability, and cost effectiveness and economic impact, which are most of the challenges I listed to you. And last but not least, we want to build on what it has already been done, and it is a lot at European level. So we want to leverage existing infrastructure, including EUCAIM, among other. So I think this was my last slide, and I thank you for your attention, and I'm open to questions at the end of the session.
Thank you very much, Federica, for this very comprehensive presentation. Now, for the last presentation of the session, I will give the floor to Professor Regina Beets-Tan. She's a radiologist from the Netherlands Cancer Institute in Amsterdam, and oversees the Cancer Imaging and Innovation Research Program of the Institute. She's also the scientific director of the European Institute for Biomedical Imaging Research and the former president of the European Society of Radiology. And she's also a member of the 2019 EU Mission Board for Cancer. So Regina, thank you very much for joining, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gaia. You hear me well? You hear me? Yeah, okay. Next slide, please. So I'd like to it's very important if we model AI solutions that we look at the clinical need and the clinical impact. And this is large in cancer because we are quite a smaller proportion of the world population in Europe, but a lot of global cancer cases are here in Europe, and with 1.3 million people dying of cancer in Europe. So we need to take action. Next slide, please. Yes. So the Cancer Mission Board in 2019 identified 5 key areas for investment in cancer research: understanding, fundamental research, prevention, diagnosis and treatment, quality of life, and equitable access. And you can see here it's translated into 13 recommendations, and I just encircled the recommendations that impacts cancer care. So screening, early diagnostic, minimal invasive, digitalization, quality of life, and precision medicine. Next slide, please. The Europe Beating Cancer Plan, you can see the same themes. So it's not a alone program, but really intertwined with all other cancer working programs. Next slide, please. What is the entire concept of this? Where can we gain the most? Where do we have to invest? If you look at this metastatic disease, is everyone able to see my arrow? No, I don't think so. Okay, if you look at the right part of this graph, You see the metastatic disease, stage 4 disease. These patients now can be treated with a very expensive medicine like immunotherapy, but we still lose a lot of patients. The cost is high. If we look at the advanced stage, stage 3, those are locally advanced tumors without metastasis, we have a very good technology that will cure these tumors. But again, we still lose a lot of patients because of distant spread. And why? Because we only identify patients at the symptomatic stage. And we can already know that these patients, even though you don't see the metastasis, have already spread tumor. So what we need to do is to invest much earlier in cancer before it's cancer, or in the very, very small tumor volume. And better, of course, is to go even more earlier and reduce the initiation triggers in society, which is healthy lifestyle and healthy environment. Next slide, please. So if we look at the mammography screening, so screening program, this is very convincing. A study that has shown that instead of 2 screening radiologists looking at one mammography, that one radiologist can be replaced by AI and perform similar with a similar detection rate. Next slide, please. If we look at the bowel screening, there is also an impact with decreasing incidence and decreasing mortality. So if you look at this bowel, you have the small tumors that can be resected without major surgery. But the question is what's going on around the bowel. And I show you that graph where the tumor cells are spreading already, but we don't see it. And next, push next slide, please. So also, if you look at the advanced tumors, the stage 3, a lot of new technology can target these tumors better and we can cure them. We can even have up to 90% of those tumors nowadays, meaning that we operate patients with giving them a stoma, but they would not have needed the operation. Can we go forward, please? So they would not have needed the operation and are overtreated. So the paradigm shift is to preserve the organ and defer from surgery, because there is a better quality of life. And nowadays patients know this, and they really come to the outpatient clinic and ask for this treatment. The problem only is if you have very small tumors, they don't need radiation. But if you want to go for organ preservation, you need to identify which of those tumors will really benefit and have a complete response. So we can go for organ preservation. And the problem also is if we go for these radiation treatment, not all respond very well and still need surgery. And then the surgery shows more complication rate because it's more difficult to do surgery after radiotherapy. Next slide, please. So the research that we should focus with our new technologies and our AI solutions is to search for non-invasive biomarkers for the detection of very small tumor volumes. And we should really focus on advancing our technologies to better guide the treatment. We should focus on immunotherapy, a combination of therapy to increase the complete responders, to offer more patients organ preservation. And we should identify accurate predictive biomarkers of outcome. Next slide. So what we also need to do is work together and not in silo, because people always tend to only look at their biomarkers and try to find the best solution and get the best performance as possible. But in fact, I believe that the integration of these biomarkers is the most powerful. And from that integrated biomarkers, we should really work on AI solutions to make accurate prediction models of outcome. Next slide. So this is a group from the ESMO who looked at many studies that investigated AI solutions using, again, their own biomarker, genomics, radiomics, tissue, and only 5 using all this integration, and only 20 using the real-world setting. So their conclusion is that the AI solution development is hindered and implementation is hindered by retrospective data set, diverse AI methodologies, and not transparent decision making. So at the moment, direct clinical implementation of prediction of which are the right treatment is still limited. Can you go to next slide? Yeah. So together with Professor Martí Bonmatí, we have started, the European Society of Radiology have started to build a joint statement with the title Advancing Precision Medicine for Europe's Cancer Patients with AI-Powered Imaging. And it is in close collaboration with the EUCAIM, because the EUCAIM is the basis of all. Can you push forward to the next slide? So our vision is, with this joint statement, to advance precision medicine, to contribute to the full implementation of Europe's Beating Cancer Plan, in particular the flagship project EUCAIM, to contribute to your EU Cancer Mission Program and EU's digital health policies, and bring integrated diagnostics into the clinic and promote the development of accurate AI-powered integrated diagnostic models, providing healthcare providers with accurate predictors of treatment outcome. Next slide, please. So this is built upon EU health policy priorities and ties in with relevant elements of the AI Act and EHDS. Next slide, please. This is just, I don't have time, but this is just to show the 10 actions that we would like to have stakeholders act upon to understand what are the guidelines, what need to be done from the basic towards the implementation of AI solutions. And these actions are committed to by the signatories of the joint statement that you can read when you scan this QR code. We are looking at, or we are recommending to review the existing literature. We should work together because we need to understand, including engaging the patients and clinical colleagues, which are the strategies that are the correct one to get into that what we want to do, achieve better outcome for patients. Addressing data quality, etc., what we have already addressed during this hour, and especially build trust and transparency among healthcare providers, because usually they are not very, they do not want to rely on AI because they don't know, it's sort of a black box. So we need to educate also healthcare providers. Next slide. So yeah, this is a take-home message. What are the trends in cancer care which we could use to direct research in AI solutions? It's about screening. It's about minimally invasive treatment, organ preservation, image-guided technologies. It's about precision medicine. Next slide, please. And the research should definitely go for non-invasive predictive biomarkers, including modeling our AI solutions, emerging technologies, advancing our imaging technology to guide treatment. We investigate all kinds of combinations treatment to increase organ preservation. But I think one of the most powerful tools to identify the right treatment for the right patient is integrating all biomarkers that we have to feed AI, multimodal AI solutions to build prediction models of outcome. And with that, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor, for this nice sort of final presentation. Now we have 10 minutes left, so I would like to ask 3 questions that I read from the chat. So the first one is directed to Janos. So I think you've mentioned this already, but maybe you can stress it a bit more since we got asked the question. So how is EUCAIM approach to sensitive health data aligned with the approach taken in the EHDS regulation?
Yes, thank you for the question. So the EUCAIM's goal is to be the health data space, and all the data protection rules which are provided in the health data space, for example, secure processing environment, anonymization or pseudonymization of data and images, are all applying data transfer, data sharing agreements, so make it safely and all the legal and ethical requirements from data holders when they are sharing data with EUCAIM, and data and how EUCAIM shares data in the health data space for research are aligned with all the rules which are listed in the health data space. And also I would like to highlight the health data space and also the AI Act have a list about what are for example, the prohibited practices, for example, discrimination based on health data, using AI for social scoring, for insurance or banking loans, or other subliminal manipulation, for example. These are prohibited by the AI Act and the EHDS, and EUCAIM will be and is very strict to follow all these guidelines and prohibitions to protect the citizens from the dangers of using AI and the secondary use of their data, and only realize the benefits for them.
Thank you very much. Then this next question could be both for Professor Wietzstein and for Federica. So can you give a concrete example where an AI tool for personalized treatment is currently implemented in clinical practice? Very hands-on example.
Yeah. Federica, you want, or?
No, please go ahead. Yeah. You are a clinician. Yeah. I mean, I can compliment, of course.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, as you may know, there is a call at the moment that asks for a specific pathway and the formation of a community of experts to see if we can implement or deploy AI in clinics. So apparently that is still something that needs to be done. And as I already said, it's not only because we do not have the data yet, the big data, to make reliable or to rely on new AI tools for treatment decision making. I'm not talking about segmentation of images, but for treatment decision making, we do not have that yet. And if we have it, then it's only in very restricted, limited centers. So there's a lot of work to do on that part. And to be honest, if I may say, do we have those tools? Do clinicians use it? Is it included in the guidelines? Then the answer is no. For the treatment stratification, that's exactly what I'm focusing on. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. I don't know if Federica, you would like to comment, or we can move on to the next.
Well, I think maybe if we go in the diagnosis, then I think the situation is a bit better in the sense that we do have narrow application that are used daily, especially I would say in mammography. Also Regina showed this example of case where, in the screening process, for cases which have low suspicious of malignancy, the AI can be used as a second reader. So this is really reality, especially in the Nordic country. There's also a Swedish study shown on that. But these are studies who took a lot of time, and also it's something that is going very slowly. I think mammography was one of the first in terms of application, and that's also one for which we do have more literature. So,
yeah, I think it is very important to have this EUCAIM platform, because it will give us the data where we can really base and make and develop and benchmark these important non-diagnostic tools for treatment decision making. Otherwise, we will never proceed there. And of course, the whole setting should also be adopted by our clinical partners who are treating the patients. So these are two very main important pillars if we want to deploy it into the treatment part of the clinics.
Thank you very much to both. Then the last question, I think it's also for Professor Bitan. So from the clinician's perspective, what are the challenges in the uptake of the innovative tools in clinical practice, and what is the role of EUCAIM platform in addressing this?
Yeah, well, that I've already said. So the challenges is because the clinicians, we need these tools to be incorporated into clinical trials, but also into screening programs, because only with that we can understand what is the impact on outcome. It makes no sense to build tools that have no impact on clinical outcome and then expect the clinicians to use it. So first of all, that include in clinical trials, perform clinical outcome studies, and second is teach the clinician so that they are not anxious to rely on AI to assist them. It's not going to replace them because the patients still need to see their treating physician. But what they are hoping for is that AI will help them to be more precise in deciding about the right treatment. That's it.
Thank you very much. So with that, I would like to go to the next slide, please. We'd like to conclude this session. Thank you very much to all of the speakers for joining and for the very insightful presentations, and to the audience for engaging with the questions in the chat. So just to wrap up, I think that it's clear to everybody that the potential of AI in cancer prevention, treatment, and care is immense, together with imaging, of course. And the initiatives like Cancer Imaging Initiative and the platform are really making a concrete difference in the lives of cancer patients and their families. And importantly, this is done by keeping security and data protection at the center, which in the end is what citizens care about, and it will really contribute to make sure that these innovations are uptaken in practice to really make this concrete difference in the lives of people. And I guess we have received a lot of questions in the chat about further collaboration and engagement with the platform and the EUCAIM project, which is a really good sign to see that this ecosystem is growing and that there is a lot of interest in this direction. So do continue to engage and collaborate among yourselves in this ecosystem. And with that being said, I would just like to remind you again, as Alexandra said, about the high-level event that we will hold in February on the Cancer Imaging Initiative, and you can find information on the slide. I will not repeat what Alexandra said, but there's also the link in the bottom right corner of the slide to register and to see the agenda. So thank you very much for joining, and I wish you a good day ahead.
Thanks a lot.